Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to our webinar. Today we're going to be talking about the new roadmap for nonprofit finance transformation. I'm Joan Benson, Director of Nonprofit Industry Marketing at Sage Intac, and joining me today is David Abel, our Senior Sales Engineer. A couple of quick housekeeping items before we get started today. I wanted to let you know that you will be getting an email with a link to the recording and the PowerPoint presentation as well, so you'll be able to refer to that later or share that with your colleagues. Also, if you have questions, we would love to answer those, so please chat those to us in the chat window, and we'll make sure we follow up with you. Today we're going to be discussing technology that is transformational for nonprofit finance teams. We'll discuss some survey findings that we got from your peers, and we'll address the needs, the priorities, and the solutions needed to bridge those current gaps. We'll answer your questions and share some additional resources. When we talk to nonprofit organizations about their priorities, their challenges, and their constraints, these things are always at the top of the list: visibility, reporting, automation, collaboration, scalability, or, of course, the lack thereof. Whether from key stakeholders, constituents, donors, or regulatory sources, nonprofit organizations are experiencing increased pressure, oversight, and demand for performance and impact, along with a call for greater transparency and greater stewardship. So reporting, visibility, automation, collaboration, and scalability become even more critical for stewardship, impact, and mission success. Part of ensuring mission success is solving the challenges that nonprofit finance teams face. So as we look to technology for solutions, we need to start with the cloud. Sometimes when we're talking with folks about cloud computing and what's true cloud computing, it's good to just start with the basics. So I thought we would just run through those. And when you start looking at software as a service and cloud computing, it's really helpful just to think of it in terms as shared, scalable solutions that users can access over the Internet. The functionality and the data is accessible from any web-connected device, anytime, anywhere. And vendors provide the end-to-end solutions, including the hardware, software, networking, and infrastructure and support. So you get a pay-as-you-go subscription type of pricing. There's flexibility for you to be able to configure and integrate with the other solutions that you want to integrate with. And one of the features of this type of technology is rapid deployment and getting regular updates. And all of that works together to help give you a better ROI. Sage Intac recently completed a survey of finance leaders in nonprofit organizations. Now, the respondents included large organizations, small, medium-sized organizations, single entity, multi-entity, from a wide range of service providers. Our goal was to discover the needs, the pain points, and the priorities from the actual finance users in nonprofit organizations. Our respondents range from CFOs to accounting managers. So let's look and see what your peers are experiencing. So reporting was the number one pain point, over 64% of the respondents of your nonprofit finance peers. And quite frankly, this is typically the number one pain point across all nonprofit organizations that we work with and talk to. Many organizations are experiencing significant inefficiencies due to manual reporting, and often that manual reporting is in very error-prone spreadsheets. This manual reporting is also complicated due to the multiple locations, entities, or maybe practice areas that have to be rolled up together and consolidated. This results in delayed reporting and is a disproportionate amount of the finance team's resources. So time that could be spent proactively and strategically driving the organization is being used in inefficient, time-consuming, error-prone manual processes. Modern technology, though, comes to the rescue here, because modern best-in-class cloud financial management solutions will not only give you your automated reporting with just point and click of your mouse to filter for the data set that you want to see, but it also gives you real-time insight for better decision-making. We asked the survey participants how much time they were actually spending each month reporting in Excel. Over 20% of the nonprofit respondents said that they spent more than 40 hours every month manually reporting and consolidating data in Excel. And another 45% spent 25 hours or more every month. This represents a lot of lost time and resources for the finance team. So let me give you a snapshot of what modern technology provides to solve this time and resource drain. This is a screen capture from one of the dashboards in my environment, and you can see here it's actually a controller's dashboard, and you can see some key reports on the dashboard as well as some charts and graphs. So I have a statement of revenue and expense by functional area, a statement of financial position, and cash balance. And what I really like about this is because you can see both graphical results as well as the traditional report format. But I really love that you can just click right into those line items and drill right down, or even into the chart, right down all the way to the source document. So you can view trends, changes, history, improvement, whatever format works for you and your key stakeholders on the key data that you want to use. And these are great because they can be role-based as well as functional-based, so everyone can have the type of dashboard and view of the data that works for them and makes sense for their role in the organization. Automated reporting and data visualization make it quick and easy for you to view the data that you need. Point and click to filter by location, practice area, department, grant, fund, whatever you want to filter your data by. Point and click to create the data and dashboard views that your various stakeholders need to see. So now let's take a look at what a nonprofit finance team told us was their second greatest pain point. So the number 2 on the top pain points list for our survey participants, and it was just slightly below number 1, is the lack of real-time visibility into key outcome and performance metrics. So whether you need instant visibility to track performance, operations, critical financial data, automation and visibility are really the key drivers here. With real-time insight, you and your team can proactively manage key areas, staying ahead of the curve and cutting out delays and missed opportunities. Let's take a look at technology and the solution that really addresses this pain point. Outcomes, performance, and impact matters to everyone, from donors and staff to constituents and board members. These key stakeholders all want to be informed and have access to real-time critical performance metric information. So whether you are focused on constituents served, cost by location, program cost by grant, or impact metrics by location, being able to gain instant visibility to real-time key metrics is critical for proactive management and for greater stewardship. In this example, this nonprofit healthcare organization needs to track everything from patients served, patients per practice area, to office visits per site. Reports here show the configurable reporting by viewing revenue and expenses by clinic location as well as practice area comparisons. Note the scorecards on the top. Instant real-time view of the metrics that I want to view frequently in real time. And this is user-based, so it can be different for every user. Impact matters. So however you measure and track impact and outcomes, you want to make sure that you automate that process and provide that instant real-time visibility. This is what's really going to make the difference and allow you to proactively manage the things that matter most to your organization. All right, number 3 on our list of pain points, and actually it was almost a dead tie with number 2, and it is inefficiencies due to multiple disconnected systems. So typically we see multiple systems in nonprofit organizations. So you might have a financial system, a billing system, electronic health records, donor grant management, case management, etc. And often these are older technologies that don't necessarily provide that open architecture that True Cloud Accounting, like our True Cloud Accounting solution has. So it can make challenges when you're talking about integration and easy automation between the two systems. So when you add to this the complexities of having multiple locations and entities, you can start to see where the pain and inefficiency can become overwhelming. As nonprofit organizations scale and grow, and they add program areas and locations and possibly entities, it is critical that their financial system of record leverage modern true cloud technology with an open API that provides for that easy and automated integration. When we look at the various needs, priorities, solutions, departments, and perspectives that are part of the daily life of a nonprofit organization, you get lots of opportunities for gaps. So whether it's the gaps between development and finance or donors and board members, gaps impede stewardship. And these gaps have traditionally meant duplicate work, duplicate data entry, inefficiency, lack of automation, in general, a significant loss of productivity, and a much greater chance of errors. True cloud, best-in-class solutions bridge those gaps, and they do it with technology and open architecture that really brings true visibility and integration. And this removes the gaps and interrupters that have existed and brings that inefficiency and productivity that we all need to do more with less and do it faster and easier. So let me show you a visual, practical application of what I'm talking about. This is a dashboard that illustrates the connectivity I've been talking about. And in this dashboard, you're looking at donor and giving revenue data, calculations of metrics from that data. So the donor and giving revenue data is coming from Salesforce in my system. The financial information, the cost, and the metric calculations are coming from the financial system of record, Sage Intac. This is possible due to open APIs that allow an automated flow of data between the two systems. So this gives you an idea of the possibilities that exist with connectivity. I wanted to just quickly mention the other two pain points that had fairly high numbers in our survey, and that was lack of process automation and lack of collaboration, were other pain points that we saw a lot of consistency as far as being priorities for folks. And I think process automation is one of those things that, again, adds more work and resources and time and yields the lower productivity for the finance team. So we've talked about that already, and the cloud and best-in-class technology and what that does to solve that process automation issue. I think collaboration across functional areas is an increasing issue that we hear about from many organizations, both on the nonprofit and the for-profit side. We are all just inundated with messaging and emails and document trails, and it's very difficult to get immediate information that we need when we need to find something out. So we have a great solution for that that's really transforming businesses, and I want to show that to you. When we talk with nonprofit organizations, they're always interested in how they can gain value. And in some cases, that's by reducing costs, but in others, it may be growth without additional headcount or reducing the time it takes to close the book and generate reports. This dashboard snapshot shows you the audit and tax preparers and compliance dashboard. We've had many Intac users that have reported significant savings through reduced audit cost. So this is a view-only dashboard that you can give access to your external auditors, and they have view-only access, and they can get the critical reports that they need, be able to drill down right to the source documents. So this saves all kinds of time and audit expenses for you while still maintaining control and securities. And one of the really exciting ways that Sage Intac nonprofit clients are expanding the value proposition is through the integration with the Salesforce tool, Chatter. And Chatter within Intac allows you to easily communicate about anything right on the relevant page. So in this case, we have key communications between departments and external auditors. So, you can actually chatter and have conversation around a reclassification or whatever it might be. And it's a great way to track and document key information, recommendations, or even audit adjustments. And it stays there permanently attached to the record. And this is available to Salesforce and Intac users, or Intac users that aren't even Salesforce users. So you're able to streamline communication and gain efficiency and sustain growth. As we talk about bridging the connectivity gap, it's important to keep in mind that we're really talking about that integration, the visibility, the automation, impact, mission success, and it affects all of these various areas, whether we're talking about stewardship or fundraising or programs or impact. It's all connected, and we want to be able to access and utilize and leverage that data in real time. And you're able to do that with modern best-in-class financial solutions like Sage Intac. Whether between development and finance, programs and funding, or constituents and outcomes, we effectively bridge the gaps to leverage technology to be better stewards, and that's really the key. Next, we ask our survey participants where they would benefit most from automation, or how they felt automation would benefit their organization the most. And these are the areas that received the greatest number of responses. All of these had over a 50% response rate because these are top of mind things that they're really feeling pressure about to be able to perform and maintain and support in a more automated fashion. So number one was outcome and performance calculations and tracking, of course, reporting, and number three was month-end close and consolidations. Obviously, these are critical areas for all finance teams, so the fact that there is still such a significant benefit to be had via automation shows the real need there is for a technology solution. So I thought it'd be helpful if we drilled in a little bit to the responses around visibility and automation that would be most transformative. And as your finance team starts to think about the possibilities that real-time visibility and automation bring, these were the highest ranking choices for technology that would be transformational to the nonprofit organizations that participated in our survey. Number one was automation integration between their multiple systems. Number two was instant drill down from dashboards and reports. And three was instant visibility in real time to reporting and key metrics. And I think we've showed you some of that today on our dashboards. You do absolutely have that instant drill down. You have real-time visibility. So if you're looking at performance, maybe you have a grant for immunizations and you're looking at performance at your various locations, you can set your dashboard up so that you can see real-time results. So you might automatically see, if you're looking at all the results and numbers, you may think, hey, I'm on track, my grant is performing exactly as I need to, everything's good. But if you were drilling into the locations, you would see perhaps that everybody is doing well except for one location, and that one location is not performing well at all. And as you dig deeper and drill into that, you might discover that, this particular neighborhood has more elderly than young children, so we need to switch up the immunization program there, and we need to provide immunizations for elderly versus young children. So that's the type of power of being able to get that instant view of your data, instant information, reporting, and drill-down capabilities. You can start to see how modern technology solutions really bring the connectivity, visibility, and automation that's required for dynamic nonprofit finance teams today. At Sage Intac, we help nonprofit organizations strengthen stewardship, build influence, grow funding, and achieve mission success. We're the financial management solution built by accountants for accountants. And as one of the pioneers in cloud accounting, Sage Intac has always been in the cloud. And as a best-in-class solution, Sage Intac is focused on delivering the highest levels of financial management functionality with that open architecture that we've talked about today that supports easy integration across multiple systems. Sage Intac brings together the best of both worlds, modern technology and subject matter expertise. Our focus, our investment, and our commitment defines best-in-class. The Sage Intac solution is based on the things that matter most to dynamic organizations: visibility, reporting, automation, and connectivity. I wanted to briefly share with you a customer example. United Way is an organization this is United Way of Central Indiana, and this shows you some of the challenges they had before they moved to the cloud and to Sage Intac, and some of the gains that they've had, especially around visibility and reporting and improvement in efficiency, and 25% increase in finance team efficiency and 400% faster month-end close, which is incredible numbers, and it's great to see the success that they're having. So we're going to give you a view into the inside of this, inside look at this technology that's really transformational for nonprofit organizations. We're really going to hone in and talk about the aspects that are important based on our survey that you want to see and understand. That's visibility, insights, automation, and ease of use.
Thanks, Joan, for that great introduction. So what is a roadmap? Well, a roadmap enables everyone in the business to clearly understand each action and what decisions need to be made, who needs to make them, and when. We believe that Sage Intac can serve as that roadmap for your not-for-profit organization, because in the end, you need to save time and increase efficiency through technology, collaboration, and automation. So before we jump into the product, I wanted to give you a little bit of visibility into the flow today. We are not going to follow this one after the other. However, we will touch on each one of these points. For instance, in the first section, we're going to touch on some visibility and some collaboration, but rest assured we will show you each one of these concepts before the demo is over. So what are we going to look at in terms of visibility? Well, we want to make sure that you're operationally compliant and that you're focusing on those areas that will make you compliant with your auditors, and also give your stakeholders within the organization access to the data that they need to make pertinent decisions to advance your mission. We're also going to touch on automation. So how are you able to increase your accuracy and be efficient in terms of conducting day-to-day processes? Joan had touched on collaboration, so we'll make sure that you have a simple and secure way to access your information and to make sure that that information is relevant. And finally, we will touch on connectivity. So making sure that you have the infrastructure for the future, for your future, in order for you to scale and also integrate and interface with third-party systems as you need to. So without further ado, we will pop over into the system. Okay, so what you're looking at right here is a dashboard in Sage Intacct. And it's actually a role-based dashboard. So as an example, pretend like your auditor is going to access the system. So they might look at, and when they log in the system, this type of a dashboard. And what we'll be able to do for them is to give them remote access to Sage Intacct so that you can save time and money by keeping them remote. And you'll also see that there's other economies of scale that you can benefit from by having your auditors access your system remotely. So what we're looking at here is a compliance dashboard. It's an audit type of a dashboard. And you can permission this dashboard so that your auditors are able to do things within the system that you want them to be able to do without perhaps even posting or anything like that, just basically having drill down and read access to the system. Also, what is relevant on this dashboard is how we're presenting the information. And we'll get into this a little bit later when we talk about chart of accounts and dimensionality. However, what you're able to ascertain here is that we're able to present data in a fashion that we're making sure that we're regulatory compliant with 117 standards as well as the 958 update. And we're able to do this in dual fashion. So how are we doing that? Well, we're doing it through the power of dimensions within Sage Intacct. And what you're looking at here is a statement of financial position, a statement of activities, in terms of permanently, temporarily, and unrestricted. But you're also looking at those same statements of position and activities in terms of with and without donor restriction. And you can see that the totals foot to the exact same amount. So we're tracking this information without having to put it in twice and also accommodating two separate standards. How? Well, when we look over at our dimensions, we have one that we labeled restrictions. And we're able to do that through a parent-child relationship. So you can see here we have a restricted dimension and we have a without restriction dimension. That satisfies the with donor and without donor restriction standards. Within each, we have nested the permanently, temporarily, and unrestricted requirements under the original 116 and 117 standard. So by booking something or a transaction to permanently, we are serving the purpose of recording it as both permanently restricted as well as the roll-up of with donor restriction. So anything booked to temporary or permanent will roll up into with donor restriction. So that's, it gives your auditors the visibility into your system, and it gives you satisfaction that you're able to record your transactions in such a way that you're remaining regulatory compliant with these standards through the power of dimensions and a hierarchical parent-child relationship. So let's go back over to the dashboard. See what else you can do in terms of visibility. Okay, so imagine that the auditor they're performing their audit and they want to do some drill down or do some fact finding. So we're going to go down into the statement of activities. And let's pick one of these accounts here. And we're drilling down into consulting fees. And something might catch their eye as they're drilling down into the consulting fees, and they see that, wow, here's a $100,000 transaction that we want to look into a little bit deeper. So anytime you drill down into a transaction within Sage Intacct, if it's blue, it's basically providing you a hyperlink into the source transaction. So let's drill down into this $100,000 and see what comes up. Well, what it's doing is it's bringing us back to the original journal entry, and we can see here where it was booked in terms of the debit or the credit. So let's drill down a little further into the bill, and we'll view it. Now at this point, we're back at the original bill for Holt Consulting, which was booked for $100,000. Well, in terms of any type of an expense analysis, a lot of times the auditors will want to look at the original bill. You can see here that we have the ability to attach documents. Well, at this point, when we drill down, the auditor is not seeing that attachment. So what do they want to do? They might want to request that attachment. Okay, now this is where the power of collaboration, Joan had referenced this earlier, we have the ability to collaborate within the system and ascertain that information. Okay, typically, back when the auditor was on site, they would get up from their chair, they would walk down the hall, they would tap you on your shoulder, you might be busy doing something, they ask you to go to the filing cabinet, pull that invoice for them so that they can see it. That takes you away from your day-to-day. Well, now they can collaborate with you. So as an example, I would type @ K. It'll bring up a list of anyone in the system who they can communicate with. And we're going to collaborate with Carla. Will you please attach the source document to this transaction? Thanks. And we'll share that. Okay, so now this should show up eventually in Carla Grace's collaboration feed. We will now close this. And let's go back over to Carla. Now you can see here we have a little say bubble, okay? And in that bubble, we can click in it and it brings up her feed. So let's go and look at her collaboration center. Spelled that wrong, attaché. So you can see here that Dave Abel, who's the auditor, has sent Carla a message, will you please attach the source document to this transaction? So at this point, Carla can click there. And she can get back to the original invoice, all right? And there's no attachment, okay? So at this point, she can edit. And here's the attachment window. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go find that particular file. And what I have done before is I basically scan this onto my computer. So I'm looking at this file and I'm basically dragging it. You can see it here coming over, dragging the PDF file over to the attachment. And I'm going to basically save that. And I'm going to send a message back to Dave Abel. Actually, you know what? Let's do it right from the bill. That way we have an audit trail. At Dave Abel. All right, let's go back over to Dave Abel. And this should pop up into Dave's collaboration feed. There it is. Now Dave will go back to the bill and click on the attachment. And there you have it. So through collaboration, has given the auditor visibility into the actual invoice for Holt Consulting. They could see it was 400 hours for a time study, $250 an hour, which totals of $100,000. And they can successfully tick that invoice off of their expense analysis. Okay, so that's some power that Sage Intacct provides your auditors in terms of visibility and collaboration within the Sage Intacct system, while hopefully keeping your costs down by enabling your auditors to access your system remotely. Okay, so at this point, I'd like to talk a little bit about our chart of account makeup, because I think this is going to be important for everyone to understand in terms of how Sage Intacct gathers the information that will ultimately be turned into valuable reports. Sage basically employs a table-driven chart of accounts, and what that means is that we're a logical chart of account structure. Our chart of accounts is based on a combination of a chart of accounts and also dimensionality. So the table-driven chart of accounts is comprised of what you would call a natural account, and then add to it the dimensions. So the natural account are things such as assets, liabilities, net assets, revenues, expenses, everything that you can imagine would be part of a normal natural chart of accounts system. As an example here, printing account number 6140 would be such of a natural account. And you can see here we have some containers here for things like fund, department, project, grant, restriction. Okay, these titles here are what we call dimensions in the system. Dimensions are additional information tags that set rules for accurate data entry and report more detailed analysis. Here's an example of a not-for-profit organization and maybe some dimensions they may have. So in addition to printing, okay, they're also tracking locations, functional areas, programs, restrictions. You can see here, we talked earlier about how they're going to track their restriction classes through the restriction dimension. But what's also important here is you can see we can set up the system to track departments or functional areas, which would be important for your Form 990 Part 9 if that's important to you. We don't produce the 990, but we do give you the ability to track transactions in such a way that you can use a report as almost a worksheet to help you prepare that 990. Also tracking programs, and you can see here that was the 116, 117 restriction compliancy. So one natural account, your chart of accounts will not grow linear, meaning you won't have to add a complete string every time you add a program. Chart of accounts will stay somewhat static, but you're able to scale as you grow and start taking on more programs or adding more departments or adding locations, for instance. Okay, so dimensions basically customize your reporting around the activities that you're conducting, and they give you the ability to also capture key metrics that are important for your organization. All right, they streamline your chart. They enable you to have future maintenance without growing your linear string. Give you detail level analysis. They give you entry rule capability. So within Sage Intacct, we could set up business rules that will enable you to set control as to which dimensions post either within each other or against accounts. And also you can leverage them for workflow and security as well. Here's another look at what dimensionality can do for you. This is what we basically call our dimension wheel. So at the center of the universe, we have our natural GL account. We also have the ability to capture multi-entity transactions. So meaning that you can have multiple companies set up without having to leave one company and get into another company. You're able to have a global share, if you will, of all your master records and your dimensions. A lot of systems enable you to have multi-company, but if you add a vendor, you have to add that vendor into every company. So if you have 10, 20, 30 companies, you have to add that vendor 30 times within your system. Not with Sage Intacct. With Sage Intacct, you basically have that entity set up. As soon as you add that vendor, you can share that across all of your entities. Same with your dimensionality. If you add a department, you add that department once. You do not have to add that department 10, 20, 30 times, which obviously saves on time, which makes you more efficient. In addition to the natural chart of account, we also, and I'll talk about this later, we also have the ability to track statistical accounts. So these will be things like hours or full-time equivalents, cases, clients, things like that. We'll show you how you can track those things statistically and how you can leverage those for reporting purposes. And you saw the dimension hierarchy capabilities. So the ability to do parent-child, right? Which gives you the ability to have dimensional reporting and attribute reporting. Okay, so you can set your dimensions up in such a way that give you the ability to leverage a single dimension and not have to waste other dimensions within the system. Okay, so the hierarchies basically reduce the number of dimensions that you have or that you need. Okay, so let's go back to our system. And from here, we're going to show you another dashboard, how you can leverage that chart of account and basically the chart of accounts and dimensionality that I just showed you through those slides. So at this point, we're going to go to a different dashboard. This dashboard is going to be, let's go over to our Director of Finance. Now the Director of Finance has a different view. Okay, these are all different components on the dashboard. We have a report that we're able to render and display on a dashboard. We also have the collaboration feed over here that we spoke about earlier, and maybe some graphical representations of some data in the system. But we also have the statement of revenues and expenditures, and in this case, we're showing it by program. Okay, so on the left, we have our expenditures, and across the top, we're actually showing you programs. So for instance, coaching or counseling. All right, we're just basically rendering those in a column format, and then we're also showing it reflected as actual to budget. Okay, well, what kind of visibility does a report like this give you? Well, as an example, maybe the Director of Finance wants to drill down, as we just showed you before, into a particular account and find out what's going on. So we're looking at this particular program here, and we want to drill down into office supplies and take a look at, for instance, what makes up those office supplies. Well, here's the representation of them by program, and we can see here that we're over budget. All right, so let's drill down into this 26,000. And we're going to scroll down here until we find something that piques our interest, and here's a bill for $6,000. So let's click on it. And it takes us back to the original bill. Now on this bill, there's a lot of pertinent information that might be important to us, but we're trying to get back at what was $6,000. So again, here's the attachment, and we can drill down and we can look at that attachment if we like. And then the invoice pops up. And we can see here it was for a gold pen for a signing ceremony. So wow, we spent $6,000 on a pen. So not too good, certainly to raise a red flag or two. From the invoice, we can also drill down into the history of that invoice and gives us an audit trail, if you will, of where this invoice originated. You can see here that it started at a requisition. From the requisition, it was turned into a purchase order. From a purchase order, we committed the expenditures. And then once the invoice came in, we relieved the commitments and sent them into an actual invoice. Okay, we could drill down into any one of these source documents and see the activity that transpired at that time. And you can see here that it was actually an original $12,000 amount for that same pen. So it looks like we had a discount. All right, so a lot of power in terms of drill down, drill back, and easy access to information from the original report that was rendered on the dashboard. If you notice, we're in the role-based dashboard. If you have the permissions, you can toggle between different dashboards. So the landing page, as I call it, is basically the dashboard that is assigned to you as a default. So the first time you log into the system for the day, it'll land you right on your default dashboard. But if you have the permissions and the ability to drill down into other dashboards, you would do that either from here, or you'd be able to show all the dashboards that are relevant to you. You can see here that some of the dashboards are marked with a yellow star, which means that they're just going to show up here on the favorites menu. But we also have what we call groupings. So you can see here that, for instance, within the role-based dashboard, we have all these different roles, and each one of these roles has their own dashboard. Well, since I'm in a role-based group, I can drill down and get to those same dashboards. So let's see what the grant manager dashboard has to offer. So now that we're in the grant manager dashboard, we can see here that we have the ability to look at different grants. And what's really important to focus on here is that we have the ability to look at the grants from inception to date, which is very important when you're tracking grants, because you do not have to be constricted to just the fiscal year or the calendar year that you operate in. So you're looking at this particular grant here, which is an award amount, has an award amount. We're also looking at the revenue that was booked, the remaining draw against that grant, expenditures to date, and the remaining spend against those grants. We're also able to look at that same grant. For instance, here's the Health One Initiative grant. Here's the row representation of it. Well, in this particular one, we're looking at that Health One grant at a higher level, and we're looking at it in terms of what was expended, all the different program expenses, and we're looking at across years, right? So we have, in this case, we have a July through June type of a view here for the grants. Okay. Here's the Health One grant in another way. All right, so we have basically inception to date, the operating budget, and the actual with the variances. And notice that we're able to put conditional formatting on these dashboards so that it'll highlight red anytime something is of concern. So in this case, obviously, we're $125,000 over budget. Actually, in this case, this is a good thing, right? Because we've actually collected $125,000 more than we budgeted. Okay. Let's look at a different dashboard. For instance, we can go to outcome and measurements, outcome and metrics. So as an example, we have some sample NFP metrics, and this is where we're going to leverage those statistical entries that I spoke of earlier. We have the ability to look at the performance of our organization in terms of performance cards, either statistically or even combine those statistics with financial data. So in this case, we have the ability to track children served as an example, or the amount of activities we're conducting within our organization, how many caseworkers. But as you can see here, we're taking those statistics and we're computing a KPI by taking that statistic and dividing it into, for instance, cost. So down here you have your cost per child per case. Okay, and these are all called performance cards. Let's give ourselves a little more real estate here. You can see here is a report, okay, a representation of a report. Up here, we're tracking our children served. 4,516 children are being served here. But down here on this report, we're showing our expenditures across our programs. And then once we have that rendered, we're able to also bring in the amount of children we're serving. So you can see here, this $4,516 total being right here is being broken down by each one of our programs. And then we simply take that metric, that statistical measurement, divide it into our total expenditures, and we're able to see cost per child. Okay, so again, giving you visibility and operational visibility into not only your financial amounts, but also tracking your key performance indicators and then taking those and creating calculations to give you values that are important to you. Let's go back to another dashboard. And what you can also do within your dashboard is perhaps you have this report showing and you want to look at it in a different way. Well, you can do that on the fly by simply changing a few settings on the report itself. So here's our report, and maybe we want to change the way we're looking at grant revenue or contributions. So we can simply click this little pencil here, and we can go to the columns or the rows. In this case, we're going to go to the rows. And let's focus on contributions. And in this case, I want to perhaps expand those contributions by a dimension and maybe look at the customers. In this case, we're using the customer field to track our funders. And we're going to do that one level down with a roll up. So let's click OK here. And we can do a preview right from here into a live HTML report. And as you can see here, now we're looking at those contributions broken down by each customer or funder, if you will. All right. And you can see here that, for instance, Cynthia DeWinter has given us $5,000 for the year ending 12/31/16 for coaching, and Zoolander Foundation $15,000 for counseling, and so forth and so on. We're able to break that down as such. Okay. We can print that, send it to Excel, whatever we want to do. At this point, I'm just gonna, I'll just cancel this, and this will go back to the original rendering of the report. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about reporting. Um, what else we can do? Well, again, it's going to be important to understand how do we do reporting in Sage Intacct. Well, the way we do that is we leverage what we call account groups. Account groups are essentially what they sound like, groups of accounts. So as you can imagine, we may have several accounts to which we assign what we call a category or a financial category. Those financial categories are leveraged within Sage Intacct to be able to give you really powerful canned reports. So out of the box, you will get a statement of financial position, a statement of activities, a statement of cash flows, without having to build those from scratch because we are able to leverage the categories, knowing that those categories serve a particular purpose and they should show up on a report in a particular place. But we're also able to create what we call account groups, and we can take those account groups and then render those on financial reports. As an example, you might have a series of checking accounts that you have in your chart as natural accounts, to which we are assigning a category of cash and cash equivalents. That cash and cash equivalents will show up on the balance sheet in a particular section. It can also show up on a statement of cash flows in a particular section. We can also create a account group, and that account group, we decide what we're going to pull in. We can pull accounts in either by categories or individual accounts, or even previous account groups that we have created. And then ultimately, we just basically build our reports by pulling account groups into the report. And that's how we basically do our reporting within Sage Intacct. We have over 140 reports in the system that come out of the box. And we can make them favorites, and we can render them as scheduled reports, or even duplicate them and tweak them as we need to. As an example, let's go to my favorites. And if we have, for instance, a statement of activities, you can see here that we have more actions. At this point, let me show you what you can do in terms of scheduling. If you want to schedule a report, you can tell it when you want to start that report to be delivered, and when you want it to end, and when you want it to reoccur. Then you have your delivery options. So we can email it, send it to subject line, or we can store it within Intact for later production, or we can store it in the cloud by basically telling Sage Intacct what the URL is in terms of where you want to send that. For instance, maybe you want to store a copy of that report in Dropbox or on Google Drive. You can do all those things through scheduling. Okay, what's also important in terms of visibility and collaboration and automation is making sure that you have proper permissions set up. So as an example, I want to make sure that it's understood that if you go into a particular role, what you're able to do there is you can assign permissions according to what that role is capable of doing. In this case, we have P. Smith set up so that he can only do purchasing and time and expense capture. Okay, so back to your auditors, if you recall, what we would do is basically give them permission, perhaps maybe only to the general ledger and accounts payable, and then we would further preclude them from posting transactions within the system so that they're able to do what they need to do for their day-to-day operations, or in the case of an auditor, for their audit. Let's talk a little bit about automation now. So I will go into purchasing. And we're going to create a quick and dirty purchase order. So what I'm going to do here is click on a purchase order. And this gives you the ability to enter purchase orders, check how you're doing against that particular purchase order, and even look at the way the workflow would operate for approvals. So I'm going to put this in on 12/31/2016, and I'm going to pick a vendor. And what we'll do here is come down and start entering the actual transaction. Okay, and we'll pick a fund, and we'll pick a department, and a grant, and a site. And we'll override the amount to be $1,000. Okay, let's look at how we're doing in terms of spending. See here that we have no budget set up, so this purchase is going to put us in arrears of $1,000. Okay. At this point, we can do one of two things. We can submit it, and we should get an error message, and there it is. Basically says this transaction exceeds the budget limit. You can reduce the amount, or you can contact your budget owner to approve the transaction. Well, with spend management, you could set it up to either stop you or proceed under this warning. If you stop, then the budget manager would have to add a spending budget for you to proceed. In this case, we're just going to submit it. Now, when we submit that, if we kind of go over here and look at our spend management purchase order, we could see here that we have that $1,000 sitting out there and it's been submitted. Okay. Now, what's happening here is it's basically been submitted for approval. Okay. Over here on Trent Hayes, who's the actual approver, it shows up on his particular dashboard to approve. At this point, he can view that. He can see what it was for, where it was coded. He can send a collaboration message. You can look at the show spend management insight. Okay. At this point, he can disapprove it if he wants because there's no budget there. Or he can just simply approve it and send a comment if he so chooses. We would approve that. And if I come back here to Carla, I'll do a reload. And you can see here that it's partially approved. Right? Why is that? Well, because this particular purchase order needs to go through a couple levels of approval. So what we would do there is we would go to the next approver. We would approve it, which in this case would be Dave Abel. And you can see here that we have an approved transaction waiting for us, and then they can approve it right from here. And there's 181 that's pending for the processing. Okay, so that's a little bit about how you can enter a transaction into the system and have automation to be able to show you how you're doing against budget, or even send it through a workflow approval process. Okay. Finally, I'd like to talk a little bit about our ability to have connectivity, and we talked about your infrastructure for the future. So what you have with Sage Intact is basically we're the pioneers in cloud financials. The Sage Intact product, when it was first created, it started on the cloud. It's never been anything else. So in terms of having a financial system that you want that's cloud ready, Sage Intact has been there since inception. And as you can see here, we have the ability to integrate and collaborate and communicate with all different types of solutions and organizations. As an example, and Joan alluded to this or will allude to this, the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, it's very key to us that this is an organization with the highest standards for financial software. The fact they have endorsed Sage Intact as the preferred financial management and accounting software solution provides any of our clients assurance that Sage Intact's capabilities as a cloud financial solution is second to none. Furthermore, you can see here that we can integrate with third-party solutions. As an example, we have a bridge already pre-built that enables us to integrate seamlessly with Salesforce.com. In addition to that, we have Guidestar. Guidestar is basically an information service that specializes in reporting on U.S. nonprofit companies. It's essentially a database that provides information on more than 2.5 million organizations. Why? Because they serve to verify that any recipient organization is well established and that the funds that are being donated to them by the donor are being used for their intended purpose. So we have that relationship with Guidestar, and we are able to show metrics that Guidestar is able to put on their website to give people assurance that the organization they're donating to is compliant. And we have a wide array, with Sage Intact being a best-in-class solution that we feel is the last you'll ever need. We also want to make sure you understand that we have the ability to scale and solve any solution through our marketplace partners who have certified solutions that you can render within the Sage Intact operating environment. Okay, so with Guidestar, for instance, you're able to have a dashboard out here that will give you the financial health that Guidestar is looking at you to track. As an example, your revenue sources in terms of these different categories. All of this information is pertinent to a Guidestar in order to make sure you're getting A+ ratings for your organization and operational efficiency. And that's basically it. So I hope you were able to garner enough information here to understand why we feel that Sage Intact is the roadmap that you need for your organization. Thank you very much. Back to you, Joan.
At Sage Intact, we support all types of nonprofit organizations, and you can see just a few of the logos here. So they span all areas from healthcare and faith-based organizations to membership and education-based organizations to foundations. So we would love to have the opportunity to help your nonprofit organization as well. We've tried to keep up with your questions as we went along today. If we did not have a chance to answer your question, we will follow up with you. When you receive the email with your PowerPoint and the link to the recording, I wanted to let you know that there's some additional resources here that you might be interested in. So just click on any of the hyperlinks here and you can get contact information, you can see additional webinars, other content resources, product tours, different types of assets that might be useful to you and your organization. Thank you so much for being with us today. We really appreciate it. We know how busy you all are. And feel free to reach out to us. If there's anything we can provide or help with or questions we can answer, we would love to be able to do that. Thanks, everyone.